There is a plant that feeds the soil instead of draining it. It pulls nutrients from deep underground. It turns rock and clay into fertility. And once established, it can replace fertilizer forever. Not seasonally, not temporarily, permanently. Gardeners used it to rebuild dead land where nothing else would grow. Farmers relied on it when inputs were scarce or unavailable. Entire homesteads ran on its leaves alone, cut, dropped, composted, returned to the earth in a closed loop that required no purchase and no permission. Its roots dive deeper than most crops ever could, below the reach of annual plants, below the plow line, below the point where modern agriculture stops looking. And that depth is the secret. Then, something strange happened. You can still grow it. You can still compost it, but you're warned, quietly, officially, not to consume it. Its supplements were pulled from shelves. Its name became associated with danger. Its agricultural power faded from conversation. Not because it failed, because it didn't fit. A plant that eliminates fertilizer breaks the economics of farming. A system that depends on purchases cannot tolerate self-sufficiency. This is the story of a plant that breaks the rules of modern agriculture. A plant that makes fertilizer unnecessary. And a question most people never ask. If this kind of forgotten survival knowledge matters to you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Roots of Survival. It helps keep these stories alive and reaching the people who need them. If it works this well, why was it pushed aside? Stay with me. What you're about to hear could change how you see survival. Modern food production depends on one fragile assumption. Inputs will always be available. Nitrogen from factories, phosphorus from mined rock, potassium shipped across oceans. Every harvest removes nutrients from soil. Every season demands replacement. And replacement costs fuel, money, and stability. When fuel prices spike, fertilizer vanishes. When supply chains break, fields starve. When soil degrades, yields collapse. History is clear. Civilizations don't fall from famine alone. They fall when soil can no longer recover. What looks like abundance is often just deferred collapse. Fields produce more each year, but only by borrowing fertility from the future. When that debt comes due, there is no quick fix. In moments of crisis, war, sanctions, drought, inflation, the farms that survive are not the most advanced. They are the most self-sufficient. They rely less on deliveries and more on cycles, less on extraction and more on regeneration. A field that can rebuild itself does not panic when trucks stop arriving. A garden that feeds its own soil does not collapse when prices double. Plants that build fertility instead of consuming it become lifelines. They buffer shock. They slow collapse. They buy time when systems fail faster than people expect. This is not about gardening. It's about resilience when systems fail. Long before synthetic fertilizer existed, people understood nutrient cycling. They didn't feed plants, they fed soil. Fertility was not something you purchased. It was something you cultivated over time. One plant stood out across cultures. Comfrey. Symphytum officinale. Medieval Europeans called it knitbone for its ability to heal fractures and wounds. But in fields and gardens, its true value was quieter, and far more important. Its roots plunge deeper than most crops. 6, 8, even 10 feet down. Below the plow layer, below the reach of grains and vegetables, below the depth where annual plants compete and exhaust one another. Down there, nutrients accumulate. Potassium, calcium, phosphorus, trace minerals stripped from the soil surface centuries earlier. Comfrey pulls them upward and concentrates them in broad, fast-growing leaves. Leaves that can be cut multiple times a season without killing the plant. Cut the leaves. The plant regrows, again and again. This cycle was understood intuitively. Monasteries planted comfrey beside fields to maintain fertility without manure shortages. Homesteads ringed gardens with it, using chopped leaves as mulch and compost feedstock. Livestock systems relied on it as green manure, returning nutrients to soil before depletion set in. No equations, no laboratories, just observation repeated over generations. One planting fed land for decades, sometimes centuries. No bags, no factories, no dependency, just biology doing what it evolved to do, long before agriculture learned to forget it. When fertilizer disappeared, comfrey remained. During wartime Europe, when imports collapsed and soil exhaustion threatened food supplies, farmers turned to green manures out of necessity, not ideology. Synthetic fertilizers were diverted to munitions. Manure was scarce. Fields that had been pushed too hard began to fail. Comfrey was cut and laid directly on fields. Mulch became nutrition. Leaves were chopped and spread between rows. Rain broke them down. Worms carried the minerals downward. Soil that had gone thin slowly regained structure. In post-war Britain, allotment gardeners faced bombed, compacted ground stripped of life. Fuel was limited. Chemicals were expensive or unavailable. Comfrey became a cornerstone of recovery. It was planted once and harvested again and again, feeding compost heaps that restored fertility without outside inputs. Yields returned without chemicals. In subsistence systems worldwide, similar plants, now called dynamic accumulators, played the same role. They acted as nutrient elevators, drawing minerals from depth and redistributing them where crops could reach them. Where fertilizers never arrived, soil still recovered. Comfrey wasn't glamorous. It didn't save lives dramatically. It saved them quietly. By making soil productive when inputs vanished. By turning neglect into fertility. By keeping land alive long enough for people to endure. One plant could feed a compost pile for years. One patch could fertilize an entire garden. That kind of reliability matters most when everything else fails. Comfrey posed a problem, but not the kind you think. The issue wasn't agriculture, it was economics. You can't patent a plant that regrows forever. You can't sell fertilizer to someone who doesn't need it. You can't build recurring revenue from a system that closes its own loop. Industrial agriculture depends on repeat purchases, seeds, inputs, amendments. Comfrey interrupts that cycle. Then came a different story. Research found that comfrey contains pyrrolizidine alkaloids, compounds that can damage the liver when consumed internally in large or concentrated amounts. Out of caution, the FDA restricted comfrey as a dietary supplement. Capsules, teas, and ingestible products were removed from shelves. That decision was narrow and specific. It addressed human consumption, not soil health, not composting, not agriculture. But nuance does not travel well. The distinction blurred. A medicinal warning became a general stigma. The plant became labeled as unsafe. Its agricultural role quietly disappeared from mainstream guidance. No one banned it as fertilizer, but no one taught its use either. Universities shifted focus toward products that could be standardized and sold. Extension services emphasized inputs with predictable measurements and margins. Garden centers stocked bags, not biology. Convenience won. Bags replaced living systems. Quick fixes replaced long-term cycles. Purchases replaced patience. And knowledge that allowed people to regenerate soil without dependence didn't vanish in a single moment. It faded, slowly, until most people never knew it existed at all. Not because it was wrong, but because it didn't fit the system built around it. Modern soil science caught up, slowly. Studies confirmed what farmers and land stewards had observed for centuries, often without formal language to describe it. Comfrey accumulates potassium at levels comparable to commercial fertilizers. Its calcium content strengthens plant cell walls, improving crop resilience and disease resistance. Its nitrogen-rich leaves accelerate composting, speeding decomposition without synthetic additives. When chopped and dropped, comfrey creates a living mulch. Soil temperature stabilizes. Moisture retention improves. Organic matter increases. Its deep taproots reduce erosion by anchoring soil layers that shallow-rooted crops cannot reach. Those roots also act as nutrient pumps,
This
pulling
technique
minerals
is
upward into
used in
forms
edible
plants and
lettuce and
microbes
comfrey
can
roots,
actually
reaching
access.
well beyond the
Researchers
topsoil.
now classify comfrey as a dynamic accumulator. Not magic, not folklore, just efficient nutrient cycling through biology. Meanwhile, the limits of industrial fertilizers are well documented. They feed plants directly while bypassing soil life. Microbial diversity declines, soil structure weakens, compaction increases, yields may rise in the short term, but long-term fertility becomes increasingly dependent on repeated chemical inputs. Biology builds systems that regenerate. Chemistry builds outputs that require constant reinforcement. Healthy soil is not inert. It is alive. Science didn't contradict the old knowledge. It translated it into data. And in doing so, confirmed what survival-based agriculture always understood. Fertility that renews itself lasts longer than fertility that must be purchased. Climate change will punish fragile systems. Heat will volatilize nitrogen before plants can absorb it. Floods will wash nutrients out of soil faster than they can be replaced. Energy costs will rise, and with them, the price of every synthetic input modern agriculture depends on. The farms that survive will not be the most mechanized. They will be the ones that regenerate soil instead of consuming it. Resilience will no longer be optional. It will be the difference between production and collapse. Plants like comfrey will not replace agriculture. They were never meant to. They will support it, stabilize it, give it breathing room when systems strain. They offer options when supply chains falter, redundancy when efficiency fails, independence when dependence becomes dangerous. A field that can rebuild its own fertility does not panic when fertilizer shipments stop. A garden that feeds its soil does not collapse when prices spike. A system rooted in biology bends instead of breaking. Comfrey reminds us of something modern agriculture forgot. Fertility is not a product. It is a process. It can be grown. It can be renewed. It can persist without permission. If this kind of forgotten survival knowledge matters to you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Roots of Survival. Every share helps keep these stories alive and puts this knowledge back where it belongs, in the hands of people who need it. We did not lose this knowledge. We forgot it. And forgetting is not final.